Next, we're going to just briefly touch on the 5 fine arts. Lori and I were talking about this the other night, and what makes a great artist? Well, there's 5 fine arts in the world. Can anyone name one of them? Just blurt it out. If you sculpture, painting, music, architecture, poetry. Those are the 5 fine arts. Now, if you want to remember them, this is what we thought of the other night. Amps, A-M-P-P-S. What does an artist do? He cranks up the amps. So, architecture, music, poetry, painting, sculpting. There's other fine arts that have been added, such as dance, drama, acting, film, videography, things like that. So, these are all expressions of the soul that are recognized as fine arts, and Walter was one such man with only a 4th grade education. He mastered all of them. And certainly Lao saw that potential, and without her involvement, this message would be who knows where. So this is going, we're rekindling this whole effort. Speaking of efforts, this message, because of Michael Hudak's diligence and Cindy, and especially one other person who is our first speaker today, without their involvement, we might not even have any idea of who this wonderful artist, Walter Russell, his wife, Leo, and this message is all about. That's Richard Dulaney. Richard. Richard's diligence and effort, along with the group that he works with, the One Heart Association, One Heart Center, kept the homecomings going all these years up at Swannanoa. Many of you have probably been to them. And he's a native of Charlottesville, Virginia. His grandparents were friends and collaborators with Walter and Lao Russell. As a child, he met Walter Russell and often played on the grounds of Swannanoa Palace and Gardens. As a college student, he was mentored by Lao Russell and received a certificate from the University of Science and Philosophy on May 19th, 1970, Walter's birthday. Richard graduated in 1971 from Yale University with an honors intensive major in American Rosicrucianism and graduated in 1977 from the Marshall Wythe School of Law at the College of William and Mary. He has practiced law since 1977 in Virginia, where he specializes in personal injury law and is a senior partner with the law firm of Dulaney, Lao and Thomas. Website is DulaneyLauerThomas.com. He served on the board of directors at the USP from 1985 through the year 2000. Richard in 2000 co-founded and currently serves as secretary of the Center of the One Heart, a support networking Virginia nonprofit serving teachers, healers, artists, and spiritual seekers in the central Virginia area, offering periodic events and gatherings throughout the year. He is also a certified personal coach with the Institute of Heart Math, very cool institute, in Santa Cruz County, California. You can visit heartmath.org for more information on that. And like I said, without these homecomings, Lori and I attended the first one in 2010, where I met Jacqueline, Jim, John, multiple other people. All this is a result of his continuation and the efforts of Cindy and Michael. And for that, I thank you. And without further ado, let's welcome Richard Dulaney.
Thank you, sir. Good job. Eloquent. That handsome young man is Matt Presti. For anybody that started watching when the video started, didn't hear his preamble. And real kudos to Matt. You know, some people are just called to this work. You know, it's called messengership. That's what I like to think of it as. And he's worth way more than the paycheck that he gets, the enthusiasm he brings to the job. He really is working for Walter and Lao Russell, just as Cindy Lewis, who's been here for a quarter century through many changes of leadership and administrations at the University of Science and Philosophy. She's worked for Walter Russell. Big shout out to the board of directors for the University of Science and Philosophy for their wisdom in opening the door for Matt Presti to succeed Michael Hudak. So this little gathering this weekend is a watershed moment, truly new beginnings. That's a great way to frame it. It's a renaissance. And It's I feel honored to be here and happy that it's happening, and I hope you're happy that it's happening, and we're going to have a really good time this weekend. So I want to thank everyone who's watching the live stream for joining in, and hopefully you can feel and share some of the magic that we're going to be creating this weekend. I'd like to take a moment and just offer a brief invocation for the weekend. If everybody just close your eyes or leave them open and just take a real deep breath. Let's start with our breath and just breathe the life force in deeply into our lungs and feel the earth, feel the gravity of the earth, feel the spirit within us as the energy of the all that is moves in and out, and we become connected with the whole. Draw that light in as you breathe through your crown center into the hemisphere, the valley between the hemispheres of the brain, and let that hemisphere be filled with light, right to left, left to right, to become balanced and whole, and then bring that light down into your heart and let it anchor there. Put your hand on your heart if you'd like and just breathe in and out a little bit. Feel the all of the universe and your essence and energy as it breathes out. Take a moment, if you've been to Swannanoa or at homecomings, and remember a really happy feet moment when you were so glad you were here. If you've never been here, you've never come up the mountain, think of one of those times when you felt so good in your life, when everything was going right, when you really were in attunement and alignment. That's the kind of field environment we're going to create together this weekend, in this room, on this mountain, and through the collective connected consciousness of all of us, even those of you that are watching this live stream. So if you're an alumni, remember how you felt when you first heard of Walter and Lao Russell, when you first read The Man Who Tapped the Secrets of the Universe, when you first came up the mountain and saw the palace, maybe in a shrouded, foggy day like this morning, and saw that jewel and were just so blown away by it. Remember that. And as you studied the teachings and got excited and went, wow, look at this. What a comprehensive set of teachings. Universal law, natural science, living philosophy. So this weekend, what are we all about here? Well, first and foremost, connecting with each other and finding our coherence. It's sort of like putting pieces of a puzzle together. It's a treasure hunt. Anybody do Pokemon Go? You know, we're going to be out here finding our little piece, you know. We're going to get some Pokemon critters here, you know, and it might be connections with someone. It might be information that comes to you. It might just be a quiet meditation in the break when you have that aha moment. But God willing, the Creator would call us forth. Let us all be transformed and shifted and changed and made new. Let us each have our new beginning, even as we collectively have our new beginning. In the 1980s, Lao Russell began having a few student gatherings, and I was honored and privileged to attend some of those, which is really great because back in the 80s, Ronald Reagan was president. It was what do they call it, the I, me, mine generation. Everybody was going, well, where are the ascended masters? You know, it just felt a little isolated back then. And so I remember when I came up the mountain and was able to have small gatherings, no larger than what we have here this weekend, and meet other people who were into this teaching and studied this information, who were practicing it, or at least making the effort to practice it. And so that connection has always stuck with me. And when the university made the decision to leave Swannanoa Palace, which was troublesome and expensive and not for sale, and there was a lot of good reasons why that occurred at the time, I really was part of a remnant of students locally, for the most part, who had met and found each other through these sorts of gatherings. The university in the 90s did homecomings, okay? This is not a new term. So that's what we're doing this weekend. We're coming home. We're coming home to ourselves, which means we're going to learn really how to live our messengership. And then we're going to be looking at how to extend that, how to put that out there and really make it available. Lao Russell used to say, you can't give what you don't have. Jeffrey Bullington has repeated that over the years. And so her term for it was extending the message, you know. So I had a wonderful childhood up here where I was kind of got used to being around Swannanoa some. The only thing I really remember about Walter Russell is he had a great telescope. Lao Russell, I had somehow had one of her books my second year at Yale, and I read it, and this is after counterculture and hippy-dippy and all the sort of alternative thinking, generational shift that was happening in those years. And I studied Zen Buddhism and Taoism and Native American wisdom and the Essene community and Rosicrucianism and all this stuff. And I came back and I went, wow, the Russells are just spot on with this stuff. And as I started to read it, well, actually, I just had one book. And I came home and I visited my grandmother, who had always known Lao Russell, not so much from a philosophy point of view, but just socially, you know, let's drink tea. And so every time the Russells published a book, they inscribed it, hand-inscribed it to my grandmother, and she put it on her shelf. Had a nice little row of books that she'd never opened. And I showed up going to Virginia Beach for the summer to work for the post office, and I started asking her about the Russells because I'd gotten interested. And she said, oh, I got all their books. I said, you do? Yeah, they're right here. And so I said, may I have them? Of course you can. I scooped up a big armful of books, and that summer, read all those books, and attended some things at the Association for Research and Enlightenment, which is the Edgar Cayce Foundation. Had an offer to go to Woodstock and turned it down to go see Lao Russell. And came up here Woodstock weekend and saw her, and then went off to the Great Smoky Mountains to camp in the rain rather than roll around in the mud up at Woodstock. So a real marker laid down there for me. I, of course, in that 69, 70 year, took the course, read the books. She was so happy that a Dulaney had come home that you know, she was happy to sort of tend me a little bit. And so I often got the occasional phone call, or more often, she was a big note letter writer, a letter from her. Then I had another, Jeffrey Bullington calls it, hi Jeffrey, if you're out there. Probably, I don't think he's low tech, he's probably not watching, but a lot of you certainly know Jeffrey. Anyway, one of my early connections here with Lao Russell, and it's the divine synchronicity that Jeffrey's always talking about, was with Doc Lou Childrey, who is the founder, the guru, if you will, behind the Institute of Heart Math. Where did I meet him? Swannanoa Palace, okay? He was up here to come visit Lao. And so as synchronicity would have it, I had been living and working in Colorado at the time. Rock and roll music, carpenter. My brother got sick, brought him back to Virginia and came up to meet Lao because I was here and ran into them. Well, that's resulted in a lifelong connection with Heart Math and all of their work, which is at least influenced in part by the legacy and teaching of Walter and Lao Russell. I didn't meet Jeffrey Bullington until 1989. That was after Lao's death, and that was more than a quarter century ago, yeah. And so that was a bit of a renaissance moment too, because the board then sort of assumed the mantle of responsibility for moving the ball down the field and keeping this message alive and extending it. And somewhere there are probably even videotapes of all of those speakers. Heart Math moved to California in '92, and I've had a continued involvement with them that's been very powerful. They really are icing on the cake of this message, heartmath.com. And they talk about doing heart math, which is really this process of learning to be a messenger, taking the tools and living them and applying them. And until you've done that, dribble the ball around the court a little bit and do that, you can't really give it. You can't really extend it. So, you know, yes? Well, his name is Doc, D-O-C, Childre, C-H-I-L-D-R-E. He just came out with a brand new book called Heart Intelligence, which has actually got chapters, 4 or 5 chapters from some of the other research and education people there. They've done an amazing job of peddling this knowledge to the military, to the schools, to the federal government, to everybody to listen. And they package it and present it as high-speed, intuitive heart intelligence, or at the street level, stress management. Hey, everybody wants to have less stress and be happy, right? So hopefully that's what we'll come away from this weekend is more ability to do that. And it's really what I like to call heart intelligence. The Russells framed it as Christ consciousness. but it's when you go beyond your head and move into your heart, and you're always leaning into every choice with your heart, okay? So I've had a delightful association with the Center of the One Heart. Pat and Connie Flahar back there, at least wave your hands, thank you very much. They are just card-carrying charter members of one of the sort of predecessor entities of the Center of the One Heart, which is the Chocolate Pie Lovers. And so is Elaine here, and anybody other chocolate pie lovers? Yeah, there's probably maybe another one over there. And so Terry, raised from the dead, where is he back there? Oh, he's in the back row, yeah, okay. I don't know if he was around back then. But when the university kind of put everything in storage, and you'll get to see the art tomorrow, and moved the headquarters to Ohio, where Hudak was, and now really Salem, Missouri, where Presti is. Cindy, of course, is faithfully through all that, packaging the books and turning the wheels and tending this place. So it's really been fun to have the homecoming since 2006 up here, and we've enjoyed sort of kind of keeping the log in the fire for the message. And really, to be honest, after 2000, I personally really felt called to foster messengership, to foster group work, what Gurdjieff and Ouspensky would call group initiation. And that's more than what you can do by yourself, you know. That's why this is a new beginning this weekend. All of us have already shown up as messengers. We've studied the message. We're interested. We've come from Utah or Kansas City or wherever we've come from. And so we're really interested. We're paying attention, you know. And so how do you take that messengership to the next level? And that is the collaborative process. That is the broadening out. You know, the Bible says where 2 or 3 are gathered. Well, when 20 or 30 or 200 or 300 are gathered, whoa, the heart-feel environment that you can create that, the messengership body that you can create. So the message is one thing. You can hear it or not hear it. If you do hear it, are you going to be a messenger? That means, are you going to do your own work and work on yourself and get a little more conscious? Yes or no? Thank you. That's threshold. And if you're willing to do that, then can you find your family of light? Can you find people that you feel comfortable with and happy with and trained with and inspired by? So like One Heart, we're like what I like to think of as a spiritual smart mob, man. We have no coffee pot, no office, barely a post office box and an email address. But we come together magically, mystically, just as we all are from these far places this weekend, to create that field environment of connecting and doing the little treasure hunt, the Pokemon Go that we're looking for this weekend. And so I found in my work, in my career as a trial lawyer, emotional intelligence, the light bulb went on for me about 20 years ago, and I went, wait a minute, you got the facts, you got the law, and you got emotions, and emotions are the driver. And the Russells often, the book 1 is the book of desire. So somebody yell at me if I get close to my time. I do want to say, I want to get through a little bit of material, but if you have questions, I really thrive on questions and answers. So for the folks that are listening on live stream, remind me to repeat the question if somebody has a question. I don't mind a hand going up and trying to stop if you feel like you have a question. In fact, let me pause right now and say, anybody have a question? I've got lots of babbling I can do, so believe me, I'm happy to. They don't even let me speak anymore around in One Heart. They've heard enough out of me, and they want somebody fresh. So anyway, I would say to you that the Russells framed it very well. They talked about inspiration. They talked about the fine arts. They talked about genius. They talked about the ability to be highly co-creative with the all that is, and that's certainly the major connection to hit that place. Then they talked about cosmic consciousness, which I really think of as an understanding, at least in your head, of the all that is. Okay, it's the universal one, okay? You know, time is not. Everything happens and then unhappens and then it's repeated and then it's recorded. Well, what does that mean? You know, when you look at the Russell message, understanding the oneness of it all is something that we can go to in our head and intellectually connect with. And many people, most of us, me, spent a decade or more trundling around in our head and looking at all these different teachings and all this different information. Where the rubber really hits the road is, can you practice it? Can you live it? Can you pick up these tools and wield them to create a happier, more fun, more meaningful life for yourself? And so it gets back to you have to work on yourself before you can help anyone else. The third level of rising potential of this divinely human consciousness is Christ consciousness. And the little parenthesis I'd put after that is heart, okay? With cosmic consciousness, you got to get up in the right brain and the left brain. You got to hemisync, and your male and your female got to balance out. You got to be happy inside yourself. You got to have both wings of your angel sort of pretty well blended. That takes a while to get to the point where the two become one, the two halves of your brain, because till then, you're lost. You're in the wilderness. And so once you've made that rebirthing moment of at least having the aha of, oh, there's this one ocean, and I'm just a drop. So then the challenge becomes, well, how do I really exploit being the drop in the ocean, you know? And that's being fully consciously connected with the power of the ocean so that we can create, so that we can be a fine artist in all the various ways that Walter Russell was. So a lot of what I'm going to be talking about today is how you drill down, how you get from genius to cosmic to Christ, okay? With all due respect to Walter and Lao Russell, those of us in this room, and especially what I call the youngers, which are Matt Presti and the early 40 crowd and on down the line, boy, you can just come in dancing on where the Russells were. I mean, this is like a wide open playing field for you to really tap heart intelligence, okay? Raise your hand if you've been up on this mountain when the Christ of the Blue Ridge was still on the mountain. Yes? No? Okay. Now, put your hand back up if you can remember what was inscribed at the base of the Christ statue. Love ye one another, okay? The Russell's message was very Christo-centric. In their own writings, they're going to say it's all backed by the Sermon on the Mount. Well, excuse me, then love ye one another as yourself. On this lies all the law and the prophets. It's real simple. So the job here is, how do we love ourselves? And how do we love each other, you know? And it's all about messengership. You can't be a messenger if you don't love yourself. So we really have to get that piece out of the way so you can be an effective messenger. And then how do you extend what you've now taken into your heart and you understand? How do you lean into life with your heart? And that means letting every choice come from your heart rather than your head, you know? It's really not that hard to do. And once we're able to sort of put that filter on and start making self-loving choices, which really means do what you want to do. Don't do a lot of stuff out of obligation and expectation. If you don't want to go, don't go. If it makes you feel tired just thinking about it, hint, hint, you know, maybe you better take another look at whether you want to put that pressure on yourself. People who get highly pressured think it's out there. They're putting it on themselves from inside. So, love ye one another as yourself. That's going to be kind of what I'm going to be talking about a lot today. Kind of breaking it into two general areas. One is tips and tools and nuggets on how to love yourself and embrace your own messengership. And then the other is, how do we build that out into that collective messengership? How do we really make a difference? My friend and teacher, Jeffrey Bullington, would often stand up at one of these gatherings and take a clear jug of gallon water and put one drop of ink in it. And then you see the water immediately shift color from one drop of ink. Well, guess what, ladies, gentlemen, everybody there watching the live stream, you are that drop of ink. You can make a difference. So as you begin to awaken and love yourself and move on, you're going to impact on the collective. You're going to impact on humanity. It's the 100th monkey. It's phase shift. So it's a question of how many of us can embrace our messengership, okay? Meaning, love ourselves, make happy, self-loving choices, or at least healthy choices that lead to happiness. One of the things, if you've listened to some of the audio tapes, I don't know whether they're still available, but Lao Russell has a lot of recordings of a lot of talks that she gave, and several of them are really memorable and really good, and I still re-listen to them because I get nuggets out of them, stuff that's not in any of the books. Just the other day, I have a little cassette recorder because all that I have is on cassette. When I'm just mindlessly writing checks or something, you know, I'll push the play button and let all that go in the background, and then I'll start to hear something. The other day, she went into a little, well, it wasn't a rant, but a discussion about what real love really is. And what she was saying is, well, love is all the little things. It's when you're at the concert with Shalel and he says, Raho, can I get you a bottle of water? And he brings it to me. It's when Dan, because he's really under that prickly exterior, nice guy, gets up in the morning and gets that cup of coffee and takes it to Kim, okay? It's the little things. Love is not such a big deal. Well, it is, but it accumulates to that point through lots of little things. So how do you love yourself? Looking for all the little ways to love yourself. Get 9 hours sleep. I'll come back to that one. And so that's something I learned from Leo, that it's an incremental piece there. It's incremental. Character takes a long time to build. You can lose it real quick. It's all about choices, basically. Unfortunately, that is true of civilization, but I won't go into politics. What I will dabble in is science and religion. Leo used to say, I can remember her laughing and raise your hand if you ever had the opportunity to look in Leo Russell's eyes. Anybody? Yeah, oh God, some hands have gone up here. Well, she had a light in her that was just amazing. When you looked in her eyes, you went, how many people are in there? You know, where do you come from? It was just like lasers coming out of her eyes, amazing. And she would have this little cackle of a laugh. And she told me a lot of things, but one of the things she said over and over was, well, Richard, one day they're going to understand that there's a scientific basis for religion, and there's a religious basis for science, you know. And she's absolutely right. The other thing I'm sure you've heard her say is, all the science in the world is no good without the love, without the woman, without the heart, without the philosophy. You know, I think, honestly, you can't get into practical application of this message that's really effective until you're moving into the heart with it. And that means that you're taking your scientific understanding and all your tools and wielding them from the heart. You know, that's really white magic in its highest form. Leo called it living philosophy. I'll be eager to see what my next speaker, Bonsall, has to say about the practicality of spirituality, or practical spirituality, because it's that practical application where the rubber hits the road. And it's all about choices. And there are, you know, it's every day, but we're just going to make our choices consciously or unconsciously. And so this is like probably the most important watershed gathering, I'm going to say, since the death of Leo Russell. That's my call on this weekend. And so what I'm really saying there is, so Leo used to, when Hudak and I both went on the board in 1985, and she'd have her little board meetings around her big table on the landing, well, on the second floor, actually. And there was a lot of older people on the board, but Hudak and I were these fresh young faces at the time. And we looked at her and said, well, why do you have us young people on this board? And she looked at us, she said, overlapping of life cycles. And she said, that's why I was 34 years younger than Walter Russell. He brought all this through, and I was able to hear it and receive it and help partner and mate him to extend it. And I've now lived beyond him. And those of you who are new and younger coming on my board will overlap my life cycle. She died in 1988. And Ramu and Matt and Jeremy and Darren, the ones that are here this weekend, are evincing that same principle of overlapping of life cycles. The good news, folks, is this message will not get lost in the dustbin of history because of you and others like you. It's really like putting a puzzle together. Leo, another little saying she had, well, everyone comes up the mountain in divine timing. When their skill or timing in their life, they'll be here, they'll help. And so in One Heart, we've often framed it as we're putting a puzzle together. And so, you know, it's easy to do the corners and the sides of a puzzle, and it gets a little tougher sometimes when you're putting all those inside pieces in. And we've realized that as we grow and move forward, for every one of us that's here, there's another dozen or 100 that aren't here yet, okay? And so in many ways, those of us here this weekend, sort of starting anew, engaging in this renaissance of a new beginning, really have a powerful opportunity to move this forward, not just for the message, not just for the University of Science and Philosophy, but because it's going to help us. It's going to give us momentum and propulsion as we walk through our journey on the earth. Remember, we come from the stars. You are a spirit. You are, the Russells framed it as mind. You are a mind that's in this biochemical human flesh. You know, the one that the pharmaceutical industry likes to cater to, and the medical community, all this biochemistry stuff. Well, that's true. You got a body, and whatever's going on the electromagnetic level, the biology of belief, I think it's been framed as, will show up in your body. Yeah, you'll feel it in your body. But the place you really want to live from and learn to hang out is that electromagnetic piece. That's your spirit, that's your mind, that's your higher self. Solara would have called it the golden solar angel. I think the Bible calls it your guardian angel. Okay, there's a scripture that names that too. And so what we're all really trying to do is bring heaven to earth. You know, it's not exactly ascension. It's the other way around. It's descension. Okay, so the biochemical human body can awaken, okay, and we all talk about ascension. But what's really happening is the electromagnetic piece, the mind, the spirit, is descending. It's coming down from beyond the stars, which was home, which was the all that is, that place when we were in the garden, when we were at one. And those two come together ultimately when the awakening happens, when you become a messenger. The father and the mother greet and meet and pull through each other to become a zone of overlap, merged essence, and the birth of a divine child as a result of that. So really, the escalators go up and down, okay? The biochemical piece has to move up the ladder to connect with home, and then home, your guardian angel, as the Bible will call it, has to come on down and take dominion and control of your body. And until then, there's going to be a little tug of war. You're going to have your cosmic, galactic, starry DNA, and you're going to have your human DNA. And one's going to run on love, and the other's going to run on fear. And they're going to kind of try to take you to different places. So there's, you know, becomes important to learn how to make choices that are healthy choices, which really is loving yourself so you can love one another. And what does that mean? That means self-observation. It means watching our patterns. Jeffrey Bullington says sometimes you just have to let the programs run. You know, you're in this checkout line and you have some loop running in your head about something. Pay attention to that, you know. The key to waking up is to observe, to see what you're doing, because up until then you're doing it subconsciously or unconsciously. You're still creating, believe me. So, you know, a lot of, and this is from our childhood, we're going to have wounds and nobody ever got enough love in their bucket. And science, modern science is going to tell you, oh my God, human DNA has a lot to say about all this. Epigenetics, okay? So whatever loss or trauma mom, dad, grandma, great-grandma, great-great-grandma, I think it goes back a minimum of 7 generations. When somebody died or some horrible thing happened, that's a little epigenetical kink in that DNA that gets passed down to you. It's like your default setting, you know? And so you're going to be following that pattern. Jeffrey calls it the family timeline, okay? But all it is, and the more scientific Greg Baden crowd would refer to it as fractals, you know, unconscious repeating fractal choices that you've been making all your life. And so the key is, how do we break free of that? How do we really hit the reset button? How do we access freedom? How do we learn to distinguish our brain from people and events, okay? Stuff happens. And you immediately have a reaction to it. You have a perception to that. And you think it's them. It's easy to get into a victim mode, and they did this and they did that. You know, and what you have to come back to is, wait a minute, this is my movie, right? Okay. Inside my brain, I'm connecting the dots. I'm having the perception. And so what happens is all those ancient fractals project every time into whatever's going on. Chalk up a lot of marriages to that. Chalk up a lot of fights and issues and drama to that every time. So it's going down. So the moment you can have your brain start figuring out the difference between itself and everything else, you've made a big step toward messengership, because you're starting to watch what's going on with your choices and, more importantly, your emotional reactions, okay? Your emotional landscape is really the key to all this. If I was high tech and had a PowerPoint here, I would put one thing up on the board, and it would be this: emotion plus thought equal result. That's the formula, folks. Well, let's break that down a little bit. It's what Russell's called a mind, motion, tonal universe. Okay, so it's a thought wave universe, so thoughts are things. Well, so are emotions. The ones you always sweep under the rug, and especially if you're a guy, you don't want to ever look at. And if you're a woman, you look at too much, and the guy wished you wouldn't, that one. The emotion is the driver behind all of this. And what I mean is, the minute you have a thought, there's always going to be an emotion that goes with it, okay? And that pushes it forward to create your creation. Book of Desire, book 1, okay? So E in emotion is energy in motion. So it's really important to start paying attention to your emotions. That's a lot of what heart math is about, by the way, is learning to, what they'd call, do self-government. Pamela over here would call it self-regulation, but it really means paying attention to the emotions, letting them be your teachers, instead of being pissed off and angry at whatever Who Struck John happened. Is, well, where are my buttons in here that are being touched by whatever it is that's going on out there? And then you can bring it back to yourself and see where you need healing, and that way, Jeffrey calls it the law of reflections, okay? I've actually got a handout. I don't have a lot of them, but I'll pass a couple around, and it won't go very far, but just, I don't know, every road take one or something. Some of you know all about this, and I won't belabor it too much, but you look through the Russells, sometimes it'll seem to say, well, emotions are bad. Well, toxic emotions are bad. And then they talk about desire being how everything is created, okay? As I've been on my journey, what I've learned is it's a crystal staircase, and it takes you from emotional heart to spiritual heart. And if you look at this little piece of paper, the emotional heart is the who. That's the people out there doing all that naughty stuff to you, the drama, the action out there, the things that you're being victimized by. So you're looking at other people, you're looking at outer events. It's your own reflection, and you don't know that. And it runs on fear, it runs on anger, runs on judgment, and it's old brain chemistry, okay? It's coming from wounded heart, from drama heart, is what I like to call it. And it's outside you, and you're projecting, and you're filtering it through your past, and it's full of blame and judgment. It's a gateway. It's a good thing. Be curious. Be curious about your emotions. Go ahead and look at them a little bit, because they are the gateway to spiritual heart. Emotional heart is who? It's the guy doing it to you. Spiritual heart is the what? Back to your buttons there. What is it inside you that's having the reaction to whatever's going on outside you? Cha-ching! When you can go that staircase and go through that gateway, everything shifts. You go from the land of who to the land of what? You go from the land of emotions driving you crazy to spiritual heart. Well, that brings the reflection back to yourself. It translates the icon for your poor little brain, and it creates a new chemistry in your brain. Thank you. It runs on love. It runs on calmness, runs on acceptance, and it's inside you, and it's powerful when you can move into observation and get clarity and forgive and release judgment and acceptance. I got the 10-minute flag back there just a second ago. I'll lay a few of these if I have any more on the networking table down by the water. I'm going to pause just a moment here since I got that 10-minute flag and say, is there a question? Anybody have a question? Okay, either I'm really boring you or you're enjoying what I'm saying. So since I've only got 10 more minutes and they don't let me speak a lot around here, I'm going to keep going, okay? So the law of reflections is a tool to really wake up. What does that mean? To see your emotions objectively. Just go, oh, there's that old lust or that old addiction, that old desire. Give me some sugar, Give me some wine, whatever it is. And believe me, Leo lived in the golden mean, between the 40-yard lines, the old Fibonacci 60-40 thing. So, there's no right or wrong. When you get to Christ consciousness, when you get to heart, well, guess what? It's all about unconditional love and acceptance. Starting with who? You, right? Okay. And starting with who? After that, everybody else, okay? It creates a way to just let the air out of the balloon of drama in your life and pain in your life and turn the corner and start using it to learn and to grow. That's a really big deal, because what you're getting to do at that point is consciously create. Okay, all your life you've been unconsciously creating, meaning the ancient repetitive fractals have been running the show and you thought it was you. It's not you. It's the repeating fractal. You have the absolute right to start making conscious choices. The spiritual catalyst, Teal Swan, I've learned a lot from her. And one of the things she teaches is the science and art of happiness, and she's broken it down to one little piece. I call it living from your deathbed. Look at every day's choices of, if I'm dying, am I glad I went to that conference? Yes, I am. Okay, then you know you're in the right place at the right time. And so it's really important to make choices that are healthy choices, okay? Doesn't mean you can't smoke your cigarette or have your wine or whatever it is, but you sure better do it with some moderation. You better stay in the golden mean there in between the 60-40 zone. And so when you can consciously create, then that's the gateway not just to spiritual heart, but to creating happiness for yourself, to having fun while you're on this little, let's see if you get to be 90, is that 30,000 days about? It doesn't take long to live a human life, you know? So what are you going to do with that? How is that? You're only here for one reason. You know, I ask people, why are we here? The standard answer is, well, love. You know, I go, yeah, but it's really creation. You know, how do we take the power of love and execute on it? How do we make choices that then create our reality, you know? The Russells called it, be ye the fulcrum of your own power, okay? So what they were really talking about is taking the message, living it in your heart, knowing that you have to consciously create your life. Again, okay, so raise your hand if you think failure is real. Disappointment, maybe. Didn't get the job, maybe, you know, things like that. But ultimately, no failure. All you've really made throughout your life are choices. It's just Monday morning you kind of wish you hadn't made the choice you made. But there's no failure. There's just choices. And so how do you make self-loving choices? That will yield you what I call your happiness quotient. I'm going to say it again. Emotion plus thought equal result, okay? The emotional piece, which is the Christ consciousness piece, which is the heart piece, is going to be the driver that creates your world. And I know my time is really getting short. So messengership, that's what we're talking about here this weekend, is how do you take your seat in the Council of Light? 5 minutes, thank you. How do you put on the mantle of messengership? That's what I call it. And that means you've done enough work on yourself to kind of understand and live and practice these principles. And now you're going to quietly and calmly at least be able to extend it. And that's what Lao called it, extending the message. So it means how balanced can we be? How much can we love ourselves? Can we be kind with ourselves? Can we be kind with each other? Doc Childre, when I met him at Swannanoa in 1971, the cornerstone of his teaching was one word: humility. Okay? So this is messengership here. It's just a major portal of opportunity at this time on the earth, and it's just a really, really powerful thing to be here this weekend and to have the opportunity to feel our collective love, okay? We're really in a sacred space here, not only on this geomantically significant terrain and Shakti point of Afton Mountain, but in all the universes up and down the line, you know. The message leads you into non-linear living, spherical thinking, living from the event horizon, as Nassim Harriman taught it, realizing that what's outside you is only 1/10 as big as what's inside you. Whoops, that's a tough one to get your arms around and your head around, your heart around. But once you realize that, all of a sudden, it's everything inside you that's creating all the stuff outside you. Heart math gives an important tool called the power of neutral, and that's just to take a breath through your heart and observe, and then move forward with whatever your emotional reaction might be. As soon as you see the emotion leap up, just put it on pause for just a second there and go to neutral. And then it doesn't have that hold on you. Okay. So spherical thinking, I don't have a lot of time to talk about that, but I would. Maybe sometime I'll get another chance to talk. I know I'm down to, you give me the 1 minute sign or something when I get there. 2 minutes, thank you. Okay. So I'll just leave you with this. Do you think the heart's just a pump? No, I don't think so. Somebody said yes back there. Somebody thinks the heart's just a pump. Okay, that's a very scientific opinion, and I respect it. I would have to say that modern science is finding that there's a neural net in the heart, and that there's a cardio-neurology there. The spirit really anchors in the heart. There's a heart-brain, and it sends more information to the brain and vice versa. And it's Christ consciousness and it's messengership, and that's where you want to be and what you want to do and how you want to live. And this weekend is going to be, hopefully, a really powerful sort of process for every one of us. And so, excuse me for talking fast, but I get paid by the word. And so did Shakespeare and a few other people, so it's all good. And so I thank you for your listening, and I hope I didn't bore you since I couldn't get any questions out of you, but well, it's too late now. Catch me later. Okay. Thank you, everyone.